Welcome to Moco Pride. I'm your host, Philip Alexander Downey, and today we are taking a behind-the-scenes look at the Clay Co-op with owner and founder John Christopher Landers and how he brings his brand of vibrance to this side of Moco. Thank you so much for having us, Chris.
Yeah, happy to have you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So tell us about the Clay Co-op.
So we're an organization of ceramic artists who were founded kind of out of a need for studio space within Montgomery County. And we've been here for about 3.5 years, and we're building a really vibrant community within Montgomery County, Rockville specifically.
That's awesome. So how did you get started in ceramics? Take us back. I don't know if it's going to go to your childhood.
Yeah, well, the first time I ever touched clay, I was in kindergarten. Awesome. And I didn't know that it was a possibility to spend your life working in clay at that point, but if I had known, I would have known immediately that this was the material for me. And in college, I came back to clay as part of an elective, and just was encouraged by my teachers to pursue clay full time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, and clearly they were right.
It's been a great journey, yeah.
Absolutely. So tell us about like your particular medium within clay. I understand there's a couple of different techniques that people work with.
Yeah, so I make primarily utilitarian pottery. So I make tableware, and I really, maybe it's just the practicality in me. My father was an engineer, my mother was a teacher, and it's just hard for me to stray from function. But there are certainly things out there that, play a role other than purely, utilitarian pottery. We have a bunch of things around us as we speak that are more sculptural or visual.
What do you like to really do with your studio space here? I know that you have a gallery, there's some teaching opportunities and also taking classes here. Like, tell me like everything you do with being here at the Clay Co-op.
Yeah, so I really feel like we're in a time where instant gratification is plentiful and people are engaging with technology in a way that we've never seen before. And I think it's really important to just put down technology and be creative. And what I love so much about clay is that it's all about creative problem solving. I believe that anything can be made from clay. It's just working within the parameters that the material presents. And so I'm passionate about my own work, but I'm really interested in getting other people's hands dirty and really engaging people who might not necessarily feel like they're instinctually creative. And I feel like creativity is a learned skill. I know that that's a crazy thought, but I really believe it's in everybody, and you just have to sort of let that inhibition go and be a little bit vulnerable, and wonderful things can happen. And then when it comes to the wheel, which is one of the things that we do here, there is no instant gratification. So you really have to work, to become even decent at this, process. And I think that people really feel a sense of a real gratification when they achieve what they set out to achieve. And, they'll struggle along the way, but it's all worth it.
That's really awesome. That's really cool. So you work here, you play here. So tell me about your work-life balance and how that.
It's always a challenge. I have a very supportive husband, and he's a chef, so it's kind of a match made in heaven. I make the plates and he puts the food on them.
That's really awesome.
But my work-life balance is definitely blurred. This is my love, this is my hobby, this is my work, this is my life. So I'm really trying to find that balance. I think we're always searching for balance in our life.
But I mean, it's so fantastic that you get to come to work and do something that you love every day.
Yeah.
So you're a teacher and you're an artist, and of course an entrepreneur and a small business owner, which
Yeah.
is really amazing.
I like to define myself as a creative entrepreneur. I think that it's difficult to make your living selling utilitarian pots. It's not impossible. There are people that do it. But diversifying my income is really important. And also for me, I love to do different things every day. And there's parts of every part of this process that I just absolutely love.
So speaking of that, tell us some of your favorite parts about the process.
Well, I love engaging with people. I think that's like number one, and that's a big part of this. But, as far as the clay process is concerned, you're taking clay from this raw, malleable material to a hard fired material that actually goes through a chemical change in the kiln. And it's just a really amazing thing that you can look at these objects and you can see that in some cases you can tell this material was at one point like soft and malleable. And so that's just really rewarding for me. I really enjoy making something. When I work hard every day, I have like tangible results from it most of the time. And that's a really interesting thing that not a lot of people get. And I think that's what's appealing to people about coming and working with clay. If you do something that's not necessarily tangible every day, you don't see the result of the work that you did. Sometimes having a hobby where you come in and you do something and you can make something with your hands is really rewarding.
Could you tell us about this art show that we have in back of us?
Yeah, so this is the 4th annual installation of our exhibition Proximity. And this exhibition is all makers that live and work within a commutable distance to Washington, D.C. And every year we pick a juror of note that is also from the D.C. area to select the work that has been submitted for the exhibition. So the idea is that we show the diversity of the objects being made with clay within the DC area from a lens of an artist who lives and works in the DC area as well.
That's really cool. Yeah. That is really wonderful. So do you know a lot of the artists and the ceramicists personally?
Yeah, so I do, and the ones that I don't, I get to know through this, exhibition. And the main drive of this exhibition is to bring these artists together too. I mean, it's certainly to engage the public, but it's also for these people to collaborate and come together and meet each other.
So you get to create a fantastic clay community within Montgomery County. That is really wonderful.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
That's awesome. So within that, and you've been able to create this clay community, do you find that there's consistency to people who come and get involved here, or is it just one-offs? Like, how do people, I mean, I know how they find you sometimes, but like, what is the community building like?
Yeah, it's amazing. Most people come and they don't leave, and that's such a wonderful thing. They just add to the community, or they'll come and take a class with us and then they'll have something come up, but then a year later they'll come back and they'll, continue on that trajectory. And so it's been wonderful. We've been seeing an influx of new people, and that's always wonderful too. We have all new classes offered this fall, taught by a bunch of amazing artist instructors, and so we're really excited.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So that's the clay community, but tell me about the business community. Are you involved within the business community in Montgomery County or in Rockville itself?
Yeah, so I never would have dreamed that I would want to be so active in Rockville, but I've gotten to know a lot of the business owners in my sphere, and we're working together for our agenda of small business. And it's been absolutely wonderful. It's definitely a learning experience for me, but I'm really enjoying it.
Fantastic. I love to hear that. I absolutely love to hear that. So do you have a good support system, but have you found that the state and your county, along with local Rockville, has been a proponent of small businesses in the area?
Yeah, when we opened, we needed to get occupancy inspection, obviously, like every other business. And Rockville really bent over backwards to make our space work. for us. We have 2 spaces here, and one was opened about 3.5 years ago, and one we opened about 1.5 years ago. And when we went to open our second space, the zoning had changed, and we sort of ran into a little bit of a hiccup. And Rockville City bent over backwards to try to help me figure out how to navigate, these waters. I said, we opened a business previously and there was no problem, and I'm not really sure what to do. This is kind of my situation, and they were wonderful.
Okay, and because I want to get to the studio tour, and I know all of our guests do as well, I want to ask you one more question about Rockville and being supportive. Do you have any advice for business owners in the area or who are starting out that want to, take on this adventure?
Yeah, do it. There's no perfect time to start a business. You just have to do it.
All right, so definitely do it.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I'm really glad to hear that. But thank you, Chris. We are going to be right back, and we're going to take a studio tour and also do a small clay demo. We'll see you soon. Welcome back. Thank you so much, Chris, for taking us through the clay making process and how we turn something from raw, unformed clay to a great ceramics piece.
It's my pleasure. I'm happy to have you today. So the ceramic process is multi-step, and it takes time, which is something that people are not always used to, that you don't get to make something and immediately take it home with you. So typically the clay process, you start out with wet clay, which I think we're going to look at a little bit later, and you form that wet clay into an object, and you can do that a couple different ways. Sometimes you just use your hands to manipulate the material. Other times you use a wheel or another piece of equipment to aid in the making process. Once you've finalized that object, it goes into the kiln for the first time and is fired to a lower temperature. And when it comes out of the first firing, it's called bisqueware. And bisqueware has made a chemical change from clay to what is now ceramic. And from that point, it can be glazed. And once it's fired for the second time, it comes out as glazeware, which is actually the final object that you can then eat or drink from or display, depending on what type of object you're making.
Awesome. So can you take us around the studio a little bit?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
We'll go on a little tour. So these are our potter's wheels. So we're in our classroom space right now, and we can accommodate classes of 8 with an artist instructor. And typically, the wheel is not something that you master right away. So our classes start from 6 weeks and run as long as 12 weeks. And usually people will continue to take those classes for several times, sometimes indefinitely.
Awesome.
So then we have, these are our wearboard racks. So this is where all of our students store their in-process objects. Our studio is sort of set up so that you can make your object, finish your object, and then come back here for the final step of glazing. So we have kind of a grid on the wall over here with all of our different glaze combinations so that people can kind of start to see what they're going to get in the end. Working with clay is kind of like seeing into the future, or creating this ability to see into the future, because you're working with this material that looks very different once it comes out of the kiln. So you kind of have to have a vision for what you're going to make, or just accept what comes out the other side.
Awesome. Do you have any favorite glazes up here that you particularly use a lot?
Yeah, I really love white glaze. I think that it shows food really well. It's not a surprise that most commercial dishware is white because it creates good contrast. We also have like a charcoal gray glaze that I really like. It really feels a little bit more contemporary, and I'm really trying to push sort of a contemporary aesthetic. There's been a long history of pottery in the United States and in the world. I would like to move into a little bit more fresh perspective.
Awesome. Let's go check out your workspace.
Sure.
So I understand that this is a co-op working space. Hence the name.
It is. So we have two spaces. Obviously, this is our classroom space. But over on this side, we have our co-op space. So this space is shared by 11 people currently. And we all just kind of share in the responsibilities of maintaining a ceramic studio. There's some equipment for those people to use. Also, people have individualized workspaces as well. So let's go, we can go take a look at.
Fantastic.
So these are our kilns. They are just an electric kiln. A lot of educational institutions and commercial ceramic businesses use these electric kilns to fire. This kiln back here, you'll notice, is a little bit taller, and it's actually a sculpture kiln. So these pieces are not actually hooked together. They can literally be lifted off and placed on the floor. The object can be put into the kiln, and then the kiln can be built around the object.
Okay.
So you can make really large vessels or really large sculpture.
Let's go look at the show you have.
Sounds good.
Cool.
So all of the artists represented within this exhibition are from a commutable distance of Washington, D.C. So for instance, this is Sean Grove, and he is from Leesburg, Virginia, and he has a wood kiln, and so he's making a little bit more of sculptural vessel forms. But just an absolutely amazing piece, combining metal and wood and ceramic and rope. Just incredible. Yeah.
It's absolutely phenomenal. And then this wall hanging piece.
Yeah, so we are very fortunate. This piece is made by a woman named Lisa Battle, and Lisa Battle actually works in our co-op side.
Fantastic.
And she wood fires off premises, and all of her glazes are sprayed onto her work and just yield these incredible surfaces. I absolutely would love to have this in my house.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely beautiful. Let's go look at something a little bit more utilitarian.
Sure.
I somehow just absolutely love this piece. It's phenomenal. Can you tell me about this one?
Yeah, so this is by an artist named Ray Bogle. Ray is in Huntingtown, Maryland, which is in southern Maryland, and he uses a process called naked raku. And naked raku, actually this bowl right here is filled with the glaze shards, and essentially these white areas are created by a glaze that's on the surface of the pot that protects the pot from the reduction environment of the kiln. And so it's kind of interesting. It's a different use of a material that we would use to coat our pots. Like most of these objects have glaze on them, and that's what gives them their shiny surface. But this is actually using glaze as a resist, and then the glaze comes off of the pot.
That is really cool.
It is really unique.
Really cool. That's awesome. That's awesome. So something, we got to look at a vase, but then we have a plate over here that's fully utilitarian.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of glaze, are all glazes food safe?
So that's sort of an in-depth question.
Okay.
But all of the glazes that we have within the co-op are food safe once fired to maturity. This pot actually does not have any glaze on it, believe it or not. So this was fired in a wood kiln, and the wood ash deposits on the surface of the pot, creating a glaze from the mineral content of the wood. So it's really cool. Interesting. And if you look at this this platter or plate, you can see the actual direction of the flame through these marks on the surface of the pot, which I think is just incredible. I mean, think about eating, you know, it's art, and then you can take it off of the wall and you can eat off of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I asked about this
Yeah.
one. It was not a setup. Can we take a look at these cups over here?
Absolutely.
These are really wonderful.
Yeah.
I see that this one looks like the glaze really crawled away from the cup.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an awesome technique. Can you tell me about these pieces?
So this is one of the amazing things about clay is that there are so many different directions. There has been this saying that says you can spend a lifetime, you know, working on glaze. You can spend a lifetime working with different clays, and you can spend a lifetime working with different firings. And so you kind of have to pick what you enjoy as part of the process, what you want to explore. So this person, his name is Ryan Rakashan, and he actually teaches at Viz Arts just across the train tracks from us. And he has spent a major portion of his ceramic career exploring glaze and glaze chemistry, which is something I'm personally very interested in. But he has basically created a glaze that has a tension, and then that tension creates a crawl effect. And so it's a magnesium-based glaze that just does really, really interesting things.
It does. It looks amazing.
Yeah.
Well, let's get ready for that throwing demo that you were going to show.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we are back at the pottery wheels. Chris, can you take us through the process?
Absolutely. So we're going to start by forming our clay into a nice round ball. Once you have that formed into a ball, you're going to put it into the middle of your wheel head and then adhere it to the wheel.
So are you moving the wheel a little bit?
Yeah, I'm just moving it actually with my hands and just sort of trying to get this as close to center as possible. And I'm going to go through centering with you first, which is the first part of the process.
Awesome.
All right, so once you have that adhered, we're going to start our wheel spinning at a speed where you feel comfortable. It doesn't need to be super fast or slow. It's kind of wherever you feel good. And then you're going to get both of your hands extremely wet. And we're going to put our left hand on the side of the piece of clay. My thumb's going to go up in the air. And my right hand is going to come around, and the heel of my right hand is going to bisect the center of the clay. I'm going to apply downward pressure first. I like to use the analogy of a suction cup. I want to force any air or water out from underneath of my clay and get it well adhered to the bat before I apply inward pressure.
Okay.
So water is your friend during this part of the process. So if you feel any resistance, you want to gently remove your hands from the clay, get them wet again, and apply pressure again.
Cool.
So now I'm going to push with the palm of my hand toward 1 o'clock, and my clay is going to start to travel upward. And it's going to be this act of pushing down from the top and then in from the side that will eventually get my clay on center.
I feel like I'm doing mine very wrong.
You know, it takes time. There's no instant gratification here, but it looks great to me. So once you feel like your clay is on center, you're going to want to kind of like a hockey puck proportion piece of clay.
Okay.
So push yours down just a little bit more. Okay, that looks great. So now I'm going to use my pointer finger from my dominant hand, and I'm going to place it on that center point. I'm going to support with my left hand, and I'm going to apply pressure and open what will become the interior of our pot. We don't want to go all the way down, because if we go all the way down, then we're going to have a hole in the bottom of our pot, and it's not going to work very well.
Okay. So I would like to have something that's going to hold
some kind of liquid. That's right.
Okay.
That's right. All right, that looks great.
Okay.
So now you're going to get your hands wet again, and you're going to take the sponge from your water, squeeze it out so that there's not additional water. And you're going to put your left hand, your fingers on the inside, and your thumb on the outside. All right, now I'm gonna hold my sponge between my thumb and my middle finger, leaving my pointer finger available to move the clay. So you'll notice my arms are always in close to my body and my hands are touching together, and that's for stability. I wanna be able to move this clay evenly, which is the challenging part, okay? So I'm gonna start by applying pressure at the bottom of my clay and going slowly from the bottom to the top. When I get to the top, I'm going to gently remove my hands and get them wet again. Good job, that's great. You must have done this before at some point.
I've done this before, but I feel like I was better at it.
So I'm just going to continue to move that clay from the bottom to the top.
Okay.
With my goal being equal wall thickness from bottom to top. I want to maintain a little bit of moisture content on my clay, but I don't want it to be so wet that it becomes waterlogged, which means that it won't take the shape that I want. It will just flop over.
Okay.
All right, so the closer we get to our final product, the slower our wheels are going to go. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to slow my wheel down just a little bit. And I'm starting to approach that equal wall thickness from bottom to top. So if you want to push in a little harder at the bottom and then let up pressure as you go up the walls to get a little bit more of that clay out of the bottom. It's looking good. All right, so now all of our pressure has been coming from our outside hand and we've been supporting from the inside. Now I'm gonna shift my pressure to my inside hand and I'm gonna open this out into a bowl shape. So I'm just gonna support with the exterior with the sponge and I'm gonna push from the interior and I'm gonna create a nice round bowl shape. You're doing pretty good. You're, wearing nicer clothes than the average potter. So essentially, whenever you feel like you've made a form that you're happy with, then you can stop your wheel, and there's something called a bat, which is on the wheel, and that allows you to remove your object from the wheel once you're done. So you basically can just take off your object at that point, and we'll allow them to dry a little bit before we cut them off.
I feel like I'm pretty happy with my lopsided bowl.
Looks wonderful.
This is fantastic. So I got to make a bowl today. And if from going from this form to something else, do I always have to start over, or could I just, pull like a ghost and magically bring this up into a huge tall vase?
Yeah, like I said before, I think that you can do anything with clay. It's just trying to work within the parameters of the material. So after you master the material, you can really get it to do things that are almost unbelievable.
Wonderful,
yeah.
Wonderful. And this is why you're the expert. Awesome, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for showing me this demo.
Thank you for coming.
No, it has been really awesome. So I'm gonna continue working on this bowl and see if I can get it any less lopsided, but we will see you for another episode of Moco Pride. Remember to love yourselves and love each other. Good night.